Welcome to the weekly Pothole on Potholes and Penguins. We hope you're well, folks. Hello to everyone on our YouTube channel, because we are visual now. Thank you all for subscribing. We're delighted to get some visuals out there. Dermot's doing some great work in it. So as you can see, we have our Potholes and Penguins jumpers, and we have our Potholes and Penguins mug, and which you can pick up on our website, potholesandpenguins.com. And also we've got a Christmas jumper on the way. Trimby, you look like you're wearing a white leather jacket, kind of like something Michael Bolton would have worn in the late 80s. What was this song? What was a Michael Bolton song? When a man loves a woman. Or was that Bryan Adams? Either way, that's what you're looking like.
I remember we were going down to watch Two Door Cinema Club whenever we were like 20, 21 or something, and I was inviting Tommy down because I thought he'd be interested. Anyway, Tommy's not that massively into music or nothing, and he goes, well, what do I wear? He was gonna wear, he's like, I've got a leather jacket with tassels, will I wear that? From like Fancy Dress or something previously,
with a white snake on the back of it.
Did he wear it?
No, we didn't know. No, he was only messing. He was only having a crack.
It is a tricky thing to know how cool to dress. I was watching a Guns N' Roses thing yesterday, and it was a look back at their career, and then when they're now old lads, and Axl Rose just looks like a mess, but everyone's, when they go to their gigs, they still dress like Axl Rose would have dressed in 1991 with the checkered shirt tied around his waist and the torn baggy jeans and the bandanas.
Yeah.
But they're all in their 50s now.
But this is what we talk. This is like that demographic's equivalent of our parents or our dads dressing like dads. So like you get stuck in a way. Like if you, whatever way you dress in your 20s or maybe early 30s at a push, then that's you. You're stuck in that mindset for the rest of your life. Remember we talked about this with Dad, like with Dad. Why did Dad dress like Dad? Yeah, the golf gear. Yeah, but like the Guns N' Roses fans are just the equivalent, but just in their world.
Yeah,
and they're stuck. They're there for good.
Okay, I'm going to be wearing Potholes and Penguins tracksuits now for the rest of my life. Can we get a full tracksuit? It'd be easier for me. It was that way.
Button up like a 1990s throwback. We should get Pothole and Penguin button ups.
With the escape hatch on the arse, so I didn't even have to pull down my pants going to the jacks.
Escape hatch is a great word for that.
I don't know what else it is.
Yeah,
what is it?
Evacuation hatch.
Evacuate!
It's not working.
Get out, everybody! Get out!
That's how they check Axl Rose for oil. So do the NCT and Axl Rose.
Stick the hand up the hole in his knees,
like the prostate exam or something.
Yeah.
Give it a wipe. Give your hand a wipe with a cloth first.
Axl Rose, you have failed the NCT. You need your indicator checked.
They were wild motherfuckers, man.
He was a really wild fella. He just in terms of like not showing up on stage and everything. There's loads of legendary stories of that, isn't there?
2 hours.
That's not legendary. That's just unreliable. That's not.
Do you know who would hate that?
Pauly.
Paul would absolutely.
What a segue. We are absolute pros. Talk about something unreliable. Quickly.
Imagine him in a Guns N' Roses concert, looking at his watch. Where the fuck is your man?
Walks in backstage, grabs Axl Rose by the back of the neck, pulls him up the ramp. Get up the fuck. Get in there.
Get out there and sing Sweet Child of Mine, or I'll absolutely bait it off you.
I'm so sorry, Mr. O'Connell.
Fast forward 15 minutes, O'Connell's calmed down and he's got his lighter.
Kick and slash up the hole.
Chat away there, fellas.
Chat away, just putting the we'll leave that in. Toothbrush, toothpaste.
Okay,
awesome.
Good girl, Molly. See
Good girl, Molly.
On your way out, please. Thank you, Molly. See ya. That went well.
You're a pro. Dad of the year. Yeah, so we do have the one and only Paul O'Connell joining us in a few minutes. So we're just delaying that as much as possible because we're very nervous. Thanks to all our Facebook group who have been sending in loads of questions, hundreds of them, to help us pothole the great man. So we'll get to some of them in the end. Trimby, how are you? How's your week been? Any bit of crack?
There's been a lot of work on this week. I've been stressed this week. But it's been
it.
good.
You were playing golf yesterday, I saw you.
Oh yeah. Apart from that, it's been stressful.
So you're playing golf with Rory Best, Darren Cave and Tommy Bowe. Rory Best looked like he got a belt or something. Did one of you hit him with the golf club or what?
He's got his nose fixed, so he's and so that's 10 days
the two
post op.
black eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. So he showed me pictures like immediately post op, and his face was mangled. Oh my goodness, in a bad way. So actually, now he looks grand. He looks like he's nearly out of the woods.
He looks grand. Wow, that nose job you got looks grand.
I would thoroughly recommend.
Jesus, a grand nose job. Gotta say so.
Was it an aesthetic thing, or was it for he struggled breathing or something like that?
I'd say it's a bit of both, but he's going to be in TV a lot more now. Well, no, maybe not. No, not more, but anyway. Tommy is the same. Tommy got his nose fixed after he finished up. But yeah, I don't think I remember. Yeah. Oh jeez.
You just got a ring in your nose. Stick a ring in it is the new way of doing it.
Big. I like cracked it a few times. I don't think I ever actually properly broke it. But I keep forgetting you're not in proper lockdown, that you still have the feckin' golf clubs open. I was loving golf before the lockdown 2.0. I used to be quite a keen golfer when I was a child, and stopped playing when I was a professional rugby player because I thought it was counterintuitive to be going out walking around and traipsing around the golf course when you're pretty wrecked after training. But now I got lessons a few months ago. I was playing once or twice a week and less shit than I was before lockdown 1, which is a good progress. But I'm also massively looking forward to the Masters today, starting in Augusta this afternoon, which is probably one of the best sporting events in the world. And especially after Tiger Woods won it last year, kind of gave it another elevation because he'd been, I don't know, that was one of the biggest and best achievements in sport of all time. And now you have Bryce DeChambeau, who's he's revolutionising the game of golf, which needed a bit of a kick up the hole, didn't it?
I went down an absolute rabbit hole. I was up to 1 o'clock last night watching watching YouTubes about your man.
No way. That's why you look so tired.
What? I don't look tired. I look great. I look amazing.
My white leather jacket on today to fool. What is he hitting? Like over 420 driving, which is probably the longest in the game. Yards, 420 yards. So he's won the Open. For anyone that's listening, most for this probably don't give a shit about golf, but this is one thing that we, I suppose, have to respect. It's the Masters, and you have a guy who's trying to change the whole game. So he's a scientist, he's a physicist, he is he has re-engineered his own golf clubs, made every golf club the same length, but he just changes the head.
This is Bryce DeChambeau.
DeChambeau, yes. He's a 27-year-old Californian.
He's a ham and cheese sandwich from Bangor.
He's like Happy Gilmore, but a scientific version of Happy Gilmore.
Wow! So all the clubs are the same length.
Yeah,
he plays up to it though. The whole scientific thing, the scientist and the physicist and all that. Apparently, he's come out with a couple of things where he's took it a wee bit too far. He said something. Like, the incline was 1.5%, or did you hear this? No,
I heard him talk but I could never pull him on it because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, other people, like physicists and other scientists, are actually pulling him on it. So he
didn't he rewrite his own his high school maths book or something like that? Some crazy story out of it.
Sounds like a myth. I think that sounds fake.
We could all do that. Busy
but
he
didn't finish his. He didn't finish his.
2 + 2 = 5. Actually, according to
would you believe it?
You just borrow a 1 from someone else. Give us a loan to 1 to 5.
Sorry, go on.
I'm not falling for it with your man. He's playing up to a bit. He's So he didn't finish his his physics undergrad. He moved on like to become a professional golfer. I did half of a physics undergrad. Granted, I moved on because it was too hard, not because I had a pending professional golfing career. But
you could have been doing. Were you doing the
he's a bluffer.
physics? The physics when you were chasing all those box kicks. You like doing?
No, this was before. This was pre-box kick. This
finger in the air.
Yeah. What the air density? That's what DeChambeau talks about, the air density and all with his caddy before
complaining to Murray about the incline of his box kicks. It wasn't at 1.10.
I need to know exactly so I can get the proper aerodynamic run with the fur coat and the pair of knickers that I've on.
There were no knickers. It was all fur coat. Anyway.
Yeah, massively looking forward to that, and if he can actually pull it out of the bag and still be able to chip and putt, because I think that's what people say Augusta is all about. I don't know these fucking things.
Sure. Pauly will know.
Yeah, I want to ask him about that actually. Rory McIlroy obviously playing as well, so keep an eye on him. But Tiger, I always just want Tiger to win no matter what. But that's not all that's going on. Of course, there's a ridiculous amount of rugby going on. Ireland play Wales tomorrow night in the Aviva. Then we've Scotland v Italy. Then we've England, Georgia, France, Fiji. New Zealand play Argentina. There's a full weekend of Pro 14 with all the Irish provinces involved. The Ireland team named, very, very exciting team. Ronan Kelleher getting his first cap at hooker. James Lowe first start on the left wing. And delighted to see they're keeping Jacob at 15 and Hugo Keenan on the wing. Johnny Sexton remains at 10 with Gibson Park coming in to partner him. And then you've Hendy back in the second row with Peter O'Mahony and Josh van der Fleer flanking Quillan Doris. Quillan is a girl's name.
It's my niece's name.
I don't know these names. So
Farrell.
good side.
Farrell back in the centre as well.
Yes. I'm very excited about this side. It's a good side, isn't it?
It is. It's very exciting. And we talked about this before. I'm glad they're doing this for Wales and not for Georgia, because it's an actual test. Although it's an opportunity to experiment. So yeah,
it's a strong Welsh team. Welsh team. They're going out. They need a win. Obviously, they've had 5 losses in a row. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Earlsy on the bench as well. I'm delighted to see that. Great to see him back. Get him on.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, right enough.
But yeah, we'll dissect that with Paul O'Connell and loads more in a couple of minutes when we're joined by the Munster and Irish legend on the weekly Potholes. Take a quick break and then he's on. Paul O'Connell, we've wanted to say this for a long time, but here it is. Welcome to Potholes and Penguins.
Thank you, Barry.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah.
Good.
Are you familiar with our show, Pauly?
I am familiar with your show, indeed. My brother is a big fan of your show. He knows Barry quite well, and he's always telling me to listen to it. So I've listened to a few of them. I listened to one of the very early ones. I think it was just absolute madness altogether. I think you were arguing over something. I can't really remember what it was, but I do listen to the show, yeah.
Good man.
We were probably arguing over a detailed analytical rugby perspective, I would imagine.
I don't think it was. I think it had nothing to do with rugby.
It rarely does, Pauly. You're just getting out of isolation, is that right? Or like limited movement, because...
Restricted movement. I'm still in it, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of make that perspective look... Like, you look like you're in the room in Train Spotting whenever he's going cold turkey.
Yeah.
You're kind of making a restricted movement look very unappealing at the minute.
Why?
It's just like it's just a long, drawn out
Yeah, well,
room.
I'm in the
You know?
dormer of my bedroom here actually, so it looks like a tunnel. But there's a dormer window right behind me, so if I open that, I actually look like a saint because there's a light right over
Halo.
my head. Yeah, it looks like I have a halo. So the room is dark, but there's a window right there. So I thought it looked well, but
Well, you look the
good.
part, Pauly. You look the part.
You're
And it's
the pro.
great to have you. Thanks so much for coming on. We haven't. Barry's been texting you over and over repeatedly. So it's
it
great to
hasn't
have you.
really.
No, just a bit back and forth and loads to get through. Obviously, we've got your whole career to get through. We've got your coaching career. We've got tons of stuff. But I want to start. We just had a conversation for 10 minutes about golf, pretending like we do about rugby to know what we're talking about. The Masters starting today. You're a big golf fanatic.
Yeah.
What do you make of Bryce DeChambeau? Is Trimby's calling spoof on him?
That he's probably taking steroids, is it?
No, Jesus. We didn't get there.
Come on, Pauly.
No, he's actually saying that Trimby's saying that he's all talk about physics and science and all that, but he hasn't got a clue. Basically, that he's, people saying that he's re-engineering how to play golf or changing the face of the game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he was seventh in driving distance apparently in the US Open that he won. So there was no one actually explained if he was seventh, what was he doing better than the six guys ahead of him. And I'm pretty sure I'm right with that fact, but I might be a little bit incorrect. But listen, he hits the ball a long way, but he seems to be doing a lot of other things very well as well. McIlroy, I think, hits it as far as him or close to as far as him, but he doesn't seem to be able to pick it up when it comes to approach shots to the green. And it's this stroke saved is the new stat that they're all talking about. Nota Bege, my boy is mad into golf, so we've watched all the build up to the Masters the last few days, and Nota Bege the third, I think is his name. He's a friend of Tiger Woods actually. He was on and he was saying that what you have to look at is swing speed and strokes gained in approach to the green, and he said that's where the winner is. So the guy that's hitting it the furthest, but then is most accurate going into the green. So, and he thinks Tiger isn't there at the moment. But to me, I don't think I'd call spoof on Bryson DeChambeau in terms of the physics of the game. He plays with clubs that are all his irons are the same length. He's definitely changed his body shape. He's hitting the ball a lot longer than he used to. I don't understand why Trims doesn't think he's doing something innovative.
No,
Yeah.
no, hold on. I read the review. So he's called the scientist, he's the physicist, and I just read the review. Actual scientists and physicists were saying, well, what you've said there isn't correct, or he's kind of got carried away a little bit with a couple of comments, apparently. But he likes being perceived in that way. But anyway,
Yeah.
He's something to talk
We
about.
all
Isn't he?
tell ourselves stories. He's telling himself that story, and it's working for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I just love it. It's got me interested in it. And I'm sure it's getting as you said, young people interested, Paddy into it when he's going. This guy's turning par fives into par fours and par fours into par threes. I mean, that's such a brilliant way to talk about the game. It probably has been talked about that before. But is that do you see that now? Do young lads going to want to go out and just crease the ball and hit it as far as possible? Is when Paddy's watching it now, is that kind of rubbing off on him?
It isn't actually. No, it isn't. I do know. I play in Lahinch, and they put in a new academy, a kind of an indoor training academy there. It's incredible. There's 2 trackmans which measure swing speed, and there's a beautiful little putting surface where you can. It shows the angle you have to hit the putts at with a light that shines down on the green. And but all the guys, they use the TrackMan. The young guys in the club, they use the TrackMan. All they work on and worry about is swing speed. That's all they. I remember chatting to one of the young lads, and I was asking him about some of the, the angle you can hit the ball at from in to out or out to in, and the spin on the ball means it goes high, because I hit the ball really high, and I'd love to be able to hit it lower. But he said, look, I don't know anything about that. All I follow really is ball speed and swing speed.
Leathering it.
Leathering it as hard as they can. And, it seems to be, even I played with a really good golfer who would have played, I think he played amateur golf for Ireland, and he played in the south of Ireland many a time. David Conway, he's a really good golfer in Lahinch, but he caddied for a young guy in the south of Ireland before, and he thought the guy wanted to chat about, what club to hit here and all these kinds of different nuances around Lahinch Golf Club. But the caddy just told him, just make sure you find my ball. Help me find my ball every time. And he just stood up on the tee and lashed it as far and as hard as he could, found it and put it up around the green. And that's how a lot of the young guys play, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I heard about DeChambeau's. Like if he can, no matter how far he gets it, even if it's in the rough, it's still easier to hit a pitching wedge or a 9-iron from deep rough as opposed to hitting a 5-iron from the deep rough. So he's just getting it out there then, which makes perfect sense. And I was thinking about this. So when you retire, obviously you're so competitive and you want to put something into it. There's a little birdie on the street that's told me that you're actually getting stuck into that TrackMan yourself, and you're getting one. You've a fella in Lahinch on a retainer. Trying to improve your golf. Is there a possible? That's not true, is it?
No, it's not. But I do play a good bit of golf, and I like practicing, and I like getting lessons and talking about the game. And it's funny, the last 4 books I've read are all golf books. And
there you go.
Probably one of the best sports books I've ever read is a golf book called it's just out. It's called Golf's Holy Wars, and it's the battle of science and art in golf. Wow. And it goes through everything in golf around coaching. It goes through Tiger's career in coaching in terms of being coached. So Butch Harmon and Hank Haney, I think, coached him pre-TrackMan, didn't have a TrackMan, and he had incredible success. He went to a guy called Sean Foley, who is a kind of a TrackMan guru. Everything is about swing speed, ball speed, spin on the ball. Every bit of coaching is done through the TrackMan. And that's when his back kind of disintegrated. It had been struggling anyway. And then by the time he won the Masters last year, he had no coach. For the first time ever, he had no coach. So there's all these interesting, it goes through golf course design and how that's changed, how 15 years ago it was all about bringing in massive diggers and digging up the land and creating these fake golf courses, whereas now it's gone backwards again. It's all about working with the land and whatever you have, and it goes through sports psychology. It's just a brilliant book, and it's one of the best sports books I've ever read. So I do enjoy golf. I like following it. I think that a lot of the writing in golf, Michael Bamberger, who just wrote Tiger's newest book, has another book that he wrote, I don't know, it's about 25 years ago, To the Linksland, where he packed in his job as a reporter and became a caddy over in the European Tour for 6 months, and then lived up in Scotland and used to play 36 holes a day in all these little golf courses all around Scotland. So there's some brilliant golf, I think, journalism that I enjoy following, and I enjoy playing it as well. I'm not very good, but I do enjoy playing it.
What's it like, Pauly, playing with the young fella? What age is Paddy now?
He's 10. Yeah, he likes playing it. He likes playing it, and he's not bad. He can. There's no minding in playing with him anymore. He's able to find his own ball. He knows what side of the green to put his bag on, and he plays quickly. So he's great fun to play with.
And come here, the artistic side, as you said, is interesting, isn't it? What did you say the name of that book was?
Golf's Holy Wars.
And looking at the scientific and the artistic side.
I think it's called, like all books, it has a name that's 50 words long. It's called Golf's Holy Wars, the battle between science and art, and something or other like that.
Because it is, as you say, Tiger Woods would come from probably more of an artistic and feel point of view, because he's been doing it since he was 2 years of age. And it's all about that feel, and that's why he's able to have those magical moments on a golf course. But there is the the science part of it as well, which so that is such a battle, and it's that I suppose is across the board for any sport and any kind of coaching.
Yeah, listen, it's the same in rugby to a certain extent. If you're thinking too much about what you have to do and how you're going to move your body and how you're going to do it, it's very hard to be good at it. But the science probably gives you the information to improve, but you need to be able to become natural with the information that the science gives you. I remember when Padraig Harrington came and spoke to us in 2009. He used to have to, about 3 weeks out from a major, he used to have to stop trying to think too much about his golf swing. So that's what, do you remember that, Trimby?
Yeah.
He had to practice. He had a line behind the ball, and he used to think about his shot and figure out what he was going to do. And then he decided that once he crossed the line, there was no more thinking. He just hit the ball. And so he had to practice getting out of thinking about swing planes and his grip and the height of his hands at the top and where they should be on the release and all that. And he had to start practicing that 3 weeks out. So I think golf is there's a great balance in golf, in that if you're not natural and playing with feel, it's very hard to hit a good shot. But at the same time, science and TrackMan, there's so much information there that can make you better as well. So you have to be able to marry the two.
I wonder if there's this a comparison to goal kickers. You know, you walk past that line that Harrington spoke about, and then you don't let yourself think. So if you're talented enough, you can get away with that. I find that fascinating because I'm hitting the ball shockingly bad at the minute, and then sometimes I just think, right, well, just toss the ball down, no tee, and don't take a practice swing, just walk up and hit it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then you're like, I often, someone said to me one time as a slag, he went, Trimby, what do you think about at the top of your swing? And then as soon as you're thinking, I know what you're doing here. I know what you're doing. Don't think about anything. And then it's like mindfulness. You always end up, some stupid thought pops into your head and then wrecks what you're doing.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, well, look, I wanted to talk to you about coaching, so we might as well dive into it from that perspective. So it's a side of things that's a fascinating area for us, and we've obviously been through a lot of coaches, but I don't think, fair to say, Trimby, not at the level you have. And having been a coach yourself, I'd be just interested to hear, your insights, and you hear of like guys like Phil Jackson with the Chicago Bulls, who we've all obviously watched with the Last Dance, and there's a great documentary on Netflix at the moment with Doc Rivers and Jose Mourinho called The Playbook. And then looking at rugby, and specifically at the moment, you've got the transition from Joe Schmidt to Andy Farrell. There's been a lot of talk about Rassie Erasmus over the last few weeks because of that documentary that came out about the Springboks. But throughout your career, is there a specific style that you kind of think is, well, that's the best, or is there a hybrid of all the different coaches that you could maybe talk us through that has kind of left an impression on you?
Oh, okay, that's a very broad and general question. I think certain coaches work for certain people. I think in terms of being able to deliver real habit change and being able to, I suppose, plan something and then deliver it exactly as planned, there was no one like Joe Schmidt for me. I mean, you can argue with how Ireland played under him, or you can argue about everything and anything about style of play or whatever. But when it came to actual, I suppose, teaching and coaching and habit change, there was no one could do it like Joe Schmidt to me. And I suppose that goes back to his history as a teacher, first and foremost. So I think it's no surprise that a lot of the best coaches in the world have done a 4-year degree on how to coach. A lot of coaches are qualified teachers, in so many sports. Brian Cody, Stuart Lancaster, not Steve Hansen, Ted, Graham Henry. So many of the best coaches are teachers. And the ability to transfer information is, it's an overlooked skill. People think you have to have this intimate knowledge of rugby and you have to know more about the game than everyone else as a coach. I don't think that's true. You have to be a good teacher or a good coach. You can learn nearly everything there is to learn about the game. You can get nearly every game now on Opta. You can watch every single game of rugby. You can watch them on 4 cameras, which will give you all the information about the backfield you need to know, and everything that's going on wide that has to do with what's going on in the ruck, or what's going on in the narrow, has generally something to do with what's going on wide. So I think any person can learn the game inside out now. But the ability to coach and teach and transfer information is what separates people. And I think Joe Schmidt to me was ahead of everyone in that regard. I think you look at Eddie Jones at the moment. He seems to be very similar. Another teacher, he seems to be very similar to Joe Schmidt. What he coaches, what he works on, gets delivered on Saturday, and that for me is where really good coaching is. I would say Gatland and Sean Edwards and the Welsh coaching staff were the same. They were able to deliver what they were working on during the week, because a lot of coaches, I think, the review on Monday is, we told you about this, we told you this was going to happen, and it's like they feel they're blaming the players for not delivering on it, when the real thing is, you didn't change the habit as a coach, or you didn't transfer the information to make the player be able to do it under pressure.
How does that compare, Pauly, that detailed approach? Obviously, we spent a bit of time with Schmidt, and I'm Schmidt's biggest fan. Just I always played well under him. Like he implemented the habit, and he changed. Like he made me a better player, 100%. Very, very obviously before and after I got the exposure to him. But then the issue is, then people will always overreact to the last event, and the last event was the World Cup, and it's so unfair that kind of clouds all the success that he had before. And then obviously by contrast, Rassie Erasmus, we were talking golf before, and we were talking science versus art. Is that Joe Schmidt is the scientist and Rassie Erasmus is the artist? Is it as simple as that, or is there a bit of both?
I don't think so. I think Rassie would have a lot of data that backs up how he plays, and then he feels that it suits the South African mentality and the South African, I suppose, the South African physique first and foremost. And I think the way he plays as well is suited to international rugby. It's suited to all or nothing rugby. I can't imagine that playing that way, particularly the way they played in the World Cup. I can't imagine that would be enjoyable for players, or players would be able to endure it for that long. But he does have a lot of science behind how he plays, and then he's able to marry that with being a brilliant, I suppose, maybe not motivator, but he's a real inspirational character as well. And his sidekick Jacques Nienaber is the same. So I think he does have a lot of science behind his game plan. And I think a lot of the best coaches have very clear principles. They know how they want to play. They know how they want to do what they want to do. They know what they want to coach. They're rarely looking at everyone else and trying to copy what they're doing. And everyone talks about the clarity that Joe Schmidt gave, allowed you to do your job really well. Warren Gatland was the same. My first time ever playing an unbelievably simple, clear game plan was under Warren Gatland in the 2009 Lions. And it was the Welsh game plan we were playing, which we knew kind of from analysing them. But the simplicity of it, the knowledge of where you had to go at every single moment in the game allowed you to deliver a pretty detailed way of playing, but in a really simple way. And it allowed you to be quite physical in delivering that game plan. I think Stuart Lancaster is the same. I think New Zealand are the same. They have simple game plans that they deliver. The simplicity of it allows them to be detailed in the delivery of it. And I think Joe was the same as well.
It's the intangible contribution to the coaching ticket that that you can't really tie down. You know, Rassie, you know, you mentioned there, like he's very good at motivating the players again for a short period of time and just getting that emotional edge. And I wonder, you know, Barry and I have talked a little bit about Rog and John O'Gibbs. Is that a lovely kind of balance of two people who I think are kind of quite contrasting styles, but they seem to have gelled really well together, and they both kind of provide whatever it is they're strong at. Jono obviously, like really, like there's a lot of Schmidt to Jono, and then Rog, there's a lot of detail as well, but there's also, he knows players and he gets on with players and he gets the best of the players, and he's quite emotionally driven as well.
Yeah, I think if you have to motivate players, you're in trouble. I think if you have a very motivated group that, you know, maybe have had a coaching ticket that hasn't really worked for them, but they work incredibly hard, they train hard, which I think most of the Irish players do in the Irish provinces. So I think if you have to motivate them, you're probably in a little bit of trouble, and you probably need some very root and branch work in the club you're going into. But I think if it's about inspiring them to something better and bigger than maybe they already are, I think you're in a good place. And that's probably where Rassie was when he went to South Africa. You know, I think any coach that takes over an Irish province, I think that's where he is. He's generally going to be taking over a very motivated group. The vast majority of them are playing for the club they grew up wanting to play for, which is really important now, I think, in professional rugby, and it's a real separator for the Irish provinces. And it's now about, I suppose, inspiring them and then delivering a way of playing and a way of coaching that they enjoy, that they believe in, and that they want to take ownership of. And that's actually easier said than done sometimes, you know. And I think a lot of people are playing the same way now, but they're not coaching it the same way. And Joe had a great saying, I don't know, do you remember it? He said, it's not the play you do, it's how you do the play. So if you look at any rugby match now, nearly every team is copying the plays. You know, everyone is beginning to copy Exeter now at the moment, the way they attack from 5 meters out, the way they put it forward around the corner and go behind him. You know, everyone is beginning to copy that. It's just, can they actually coach it the way Exeter do? And that is the challenge. And so for me, it's, you know, that saying, it's not the play you do, it's how you do the play, is really important. It's the way you want to play. It's not the way you want to play. It's how it's delivered and how it's coached, or how the players coach it, or how the players deliver it.
If you go back to 2006, 2008, Munster, we won the two Heineken Cups. That was a very simple game plan, right? That was executed to absolute perfection on those, you know, particularly on those big nights in Thome Park. I don't remember a huge amount of detail. I wasn't brought into those meetings, but you know, what was it as simple as that, or was there?
It's a different era, I think. That's an era when, and that's why France as a country probably did quite well against us in those days, because the coaching and your smarts and your technical and tactical nous, for me, wasn't as important. It was about the quality of players you had and how motivated you were. And I think, you know, under Declan Kidney, we obviously had very, very good players in Munster back then, but he always had a happy squad. We always took ownership of what we were doing, but there was nothing like the detail that there is in the game now. Nothing like it. And I think now coaching is a big separator in how teams perform. I don't think it was as big a separator back then.
No, that's fair enough. And you did mention France there. You ended up in France. You always wanted to play in France. Unfortunately, with the injury, you didn't get the opportunity to. What was it that drew you there towards the end of your career?
I've just always liked France. I went to an all-Irish primary school, and I was a Gael goer very, very young. And I just liked languages. My mom used to work, so she used to try and figure out things that could keep me in school longer. So I used to go to Alliance Française in Limerick. I used to walk from school down there for French lessons after school. It gave her an extra hour and a half in town. Then the school were doing German lessons after school. In primary school, this was. So I did German lessons. And when I went into secondary school, I was good at languages. You know, languages were my thing. And, you know, it's like in the gym, whatever thing you're good at, you keep doing it. So I was good at languages, so I always enjoyed them. So I always wanted to kind of learn French, and I would say I probably would have went earlier to France in my career, but Joe came in 2013, and it was just this revelation in terms of coaching. And it would have been a really bad time to leave. You know, we were lucky we won 2 championships and played some great rugby, and it was a brilliant experience. So by the time I decided to go, it was late in my career, and unfortunately I got that injury against France and didn't make it in the end. But I've just always wanted to go there. I've always wanted to learn the language and just see what it's like. And I think I really regret now that I didn't go, because listen, I don't regret it. It is what it is. I mean, we had amazing days with Munster and amazing days with Ireland, and whatever happens, happens. But I do think your brain grows when you go away into another team and another environment, and it's so different to what you're used to, and the people are so different, and you know, you're there with your family, and it's such a different challenge for them as well. I think, as I said, the biggest strength of Ireland's provinces is having a majority of local players playing in the provinces, because when you care deeply, as Rog would have said from his time in Crusaders, when you care deeply about the team you're playing for in rugby, it's such a hard game. It counts for an awful lot, I think. But I think the challenges that come with going to another club and having to, you know, pal around with Pacific Islanders, Aussies, Kiwis, French, and the French are just so different to us. And the French themselves, there's such a variety in their personalities as well. I think it's such a challenge that it can only do you good to go over there and try and assimilate yourself, to try and figure out.
Would you think that would be good for a lot more young Irish players to get over there and experience it? And would it be good for, firstly, the player, but would it be good for Irish rugby to, you know, to see some of these guys getting more rugby and getting those experiences?
I think from a rugby point of view, the coaching here is better. The medical setup here is better. I would say the planning for life after rugby here is better. You know, you get managed better in terms of the number of games you play. So from a strictly rugby sense, I would say no. But from the just, I suppose, the challenges for your brain and for life, I thought it was great. I was only over there for a year in Stade Francais. It was unbelievably enjoyable and incredibly difficult in many regards. But I think, you know, if you look at in rugby, if you might have a 14-year career or a 12-year career, if you have this opportunity to live in France, which is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, to learn the language, to stretch your brain a bit, it's a brilliant thing to do. Like, if your only objective in life is to be the best possible rugby player you can be, it's probably not the place to be. And there might be a bit of a physical toll to be paid by going there as well, which we can chat about in a minute. But I think in terms of life, it's a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah. Well, look, tell me about how brilliant it was when you say that. Like, what was it that was so brilliant? And then what was, at the same flip side of it, what was so hard about it?
It's just,
I suppose, the adventure.
You know, they haven't got the same academy system over in France that we have here. So the same investment, the same long-term investment hasn't gone into the players. So some of the basics of some of the players will be quite, I think, behind where a lot of where Irish players would be. Irish players as well. I think our big strength is we're not the biggest and we're not the fastest, but I think we produce really well coached and smart rugby players. And a lot of that investment goes on in the academy. It goes on, throughout the year in terms of coaching, throughout a player's career in terms of coaching. There's a big investment made in making the players smart and sharp and players that can win games that they shouldn't win, I think, if you look at some of the physical attributes that other teams can have against us. But in France, I think that investment hasn't happened as much. And you've these incredible athletes, unbelievable athletes. There's a guy that plays for Stade Francais, Sekou Makalou. He's probably the fastest rugby player I've ever seen in my life. Best line-out jumper I've ever seen in my life. Brilliant ball carrier, great poacher. I think he's had discipline issues in France. I would say a lot of Irish people, Munster people would have heard of him because he scored a great try against us about 4 or 5 years ago. But he doesn't get a look into the French team because he has discipline issues. But there's a load of these guys in France, unbelievable athletes who just, I suppose, don't have the discipline maybe and haven't had that discipline driven into them from a young academy age. They come from a different background as well. They wouldn't come from the private school background that a lot of rugby players in Ireland or a lot of the Irish national rugby players come from anyway. So the challenge of dealing with all these guys, because there's relegation there, you cannot let up in any match really, particularly your home game. So you cannot go into a game with a 20-year-old prop forward. You probably have to bring in a Pacific Islander or someone that may not be amazing for your culture, but will hold up the scrum. That will hold up the scrum and will stop you from giving away penalties and stop you from losing a game and stop you from being relegated or whatever it is. So because of relegation, there's a lot of short-term thinking going on. So you end up with this real mixed bag of a squad. And it's really challenging to deal with it and to work with it and to coach it. But great fun at the same time because it's so hard. It's, there's only so many hours in the day. You come in early in the morning, you leave late in the evening, you do as much as you can, you give it everything you can. But it's so hard. And it's just such a contrast to Ireland where, if a guy comes through the academy system in Ireland, there's going to be a good level of chances are if he's come through the academy system as well, he's probably played representative for Ireland at some stage, be it under 18s or under 20s, and had another bit of development on top. So when you get a player to training, he's going to be pretty sharp in a lot of aspects of the game. You just don't know that in France. You get these amazing athletes who just mightn't be as sharp tactically and technically as a lot of Irish players would be.
And what about then, Pauly, that experience then that you had in Paris then as a coach? Like, it didn't put you off coaching, or did you decide maybe it just wasn't right for you at the time, or you're keeping the door open for coaching on down the line?
It didn't put me off coaching. I really enjoyed it. It's just that the work hours are phenomenal, and we had a game on Saturday, so you're gone all day Saturday. You could have 5 hours in a video on Sunday, and you're in then at 5 o'clock in the morning, Monday and Tuesday, because you're presenting to the players and you're trying to make you're trying to produce a pretty good presentation to try and change habits and deliver a message. On Monday you have to try and put the previous game behind you. So there's a massive workload in reviewing a game and putting it to bed. And Tuesday you're trying to get ready for the following week. And that's just the way we did it. I'm sure other clubs can handle it maybe better. And I'm sure the longer you're in it, the quicker you get at doing the work, the quicker you see things. But for me, it was a massive workload, and with 3 young kids, it was quite tricky. And we as well, with a different coaching staff. Hani Kamir was the head coach, who was a lovely man, really great guy, but a very different way to looking at the game and preparing. So I ended up signing for 1 year. I ended up leaving after 1 year, and I don't regret it. I would have liked I don't regret leaving. I probably would have liked to have stayed in France for longer, because it is a very cool country, and we great fun there. I'm lucky enough with Munster that I've lived. I was able to play for the club. You know, I wouldn't say I grew up wanting to playing for, because it kind of took off in 99, 2000, and I was already 18. But I grew up living in the city. I grew up I'm playing professional sports, which not a lot of Irish people get to experience. So that was great. But I never travelled, like some people go on a J1 or they go to Australia. I never got to do that. So to get to go and live in Paris for a year, in a really nice part of Paris, was amazing. And funnily enough, the village I ended up picking to live in was the same village that Axel died in, which I didn't know until I was there about 6 months. My house was actually about 250 meters away from where he passed, and it was just on the banks of the River Seine, near the Bois de Boulogne, near Longchamp and Roland Garros. So it was a very cool experience.
Wow. It's mad where you end up. We always say it.
Yeah.
Looking back at that 99, 2000 year when you said you were 17, 18, like my fondest memories when I think back are obviously playing for Munster and that, but before that it was growing up in Limerick in the city and been obsessed with AIL rugby. I loved playing AIL rugby when I got a chance to, but before that, and now I love listening to my father's stories about the All-Ireland League and Bows, and then, I suppose when I was 10, 12, I was going to big matches in the home park between the Cookies and Garryowen and Shannon with 10,000 people there, which is hard to believe now that was actually the way it was. But what are your memories of that? Was that something you used to do?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the young Munsters, the big young Munsters games with massive crowds. It's we used to go to mass in the Dominicans inside in the city, and that's where a lot of the young Munsters guys used to go for mass, and just standing around with Dad afterwards, and Dad would be talking rugby with them. I remember Peter Classie had been sent off, I think in a game against Bows actually, and that wouldn't have been an AIL match because you were in junior, whatever you were. But he got sent off. I remember Dad having a chat with someone saying, "Is he mental or something? Is there actually something wrong with him?" And so that's what I was used to. That's what I grew up with, and I think Young Munsters was just such a great club for me, because I came late into the game. I played underage, but then I came back in at about 16, and I lost a lot of the development maybe in terms of skill set that was required. But Munsters, they were an old-fashioned forward-orientated club, and it was about being able to maul, being able to scrummage, being physical, and I think my skill set probably improved as I became professional, but I think I had a lot of the basics of a second row coming from Young Munsters. But they were great days, and that was our academy, really. We don't have a private school system really down here in Munster. The AIL was our academy. We guys like Dennis O'Mara, Noel O'Mara, who would have played junior rugby in Nina and came into Limerick to play their senior rugby. And, with jurors who came from Thomond to Young Munsters, Aidan O'Halloran, to play senior rugby, and I think that was probably the best academy Munster had back then. But that team from 99, 2000, I actually, I love that team because so many great Munster guys never won a European Cup. We all talk about people's records when they finish playing, but that team is effectively the team that started Munster rolling. They made Munster into what it is. By the time I got a professional contract in 2001, I just believed it was any day now before we win the European Cup. And when you play for Munster, you win, and that's all there is to it. But they had to go through so much hardship to get to that point. And I really admire that team, because so many of the great guys that played for us didn't get to win a European Cup. And that was a great side. They started the ball rolling.
We talked about
created
this before.
The culture, I suppose.
Yeah, me and Trimby talked about this before, where Trimby, I think you said we were spoiled in Munster for winning those competitions back in 2006, 2008, and we've always had that held over teams in Munster since. But my point was that team wasn't built on winning anything. That team was built on losing. You know, when you look back to those finals and what those players went through, has your perspective on that changed? You know, is winning, I'm sure, was everything at one point in your career. You know, can you see now that it's not all about how you win, that, you know, developing that culture, or is that more important? And how do you think that team did develop that kind of culture and that following?
I think, listen, winning, it's like, I think you have to be obsessed with winning and trying to be solving that conundrum of how it can affect your life, and you can get to a good place. But I'd rather have that problem than a guy that isn't, you know, that really enjoys himself, but winning and losing doesn't hurt him overly. Do you understand me? I'd rather be trying to figure out how not to be so obsessed with winning, and figuring out how to enjoy myself while playing for the team I want to play with, and understanding that it's not all about winning, rather than trying to convince someone that winning is pretty important. It's not just about enjoying yourself.
It's easier to tone it down than to tone it up.
I think so. Yeah.
Just not to crowbar in Ulster into this conversation, but you talked about coming in 2000, 2001, and you had that kind of 5-year build up. You know, it was 2005. You won the first one, yeah.
2006.
2006. Sorry. By contrast, Ulster came out of nowhere, won a European Cup in '99, and then went straight back down where people kind of thought they should be. So there was no kind of momentum. So nothing really changed. It was a one-off. Whereas I know Barry was saying there, you kind of it was built on losing, but it was built. You said there in 2001, you thought this is only a matter of time. It was a winning culture, a winning environment, despite you weren't winning, but you were building towards it, and then you built something really sustainable in a slightly longer period of time. Maybe that's my theory.
Yeah, I suppose by not winning it maybe in 99, 2000, it was the best thing that ever happened to us, I suppose, because this build-up happened, that the players went on and the supporters went on as well.
Well, it probably obviously came from Shannon winning so many ILs and the cookies, and a lot of those players had a taste of success and knew how to win. That was my take on it. And coming in as a Bows player, although we'd done well underage, we hadn't won a huge amount. So I'd done well in school and Munchins, but I didn't understand that, and I think that's what I suppose it struck me most, because these guys know when it comes to those big, you know, that Sale match in Thomond Park in 2006, it was the understanding how to win and how to squeeze that always, when I look back, fascinates me for that group of players and especially the senior ones.
Yeah, it's funny you say about winning there. You know, I've done some work with the BBC, and they've some of the older pundits on quite a lot. And, you know, you guys have Martin Johnson or Jonathan Davis or Jeremy Guscott, and we've become so process focused that we don't talk about winning. And it's so interesting to hear, like even Martin Johnson was talking about Ireland the other day, and he said they'd be better off trying to analyse a win, you know. Okay, we were poor at this, or, you know, we missed that line out, or whatever happened. But he just, I remember we played Scotland 2 years ago, and we were at the game, and Ireland didn't play well at all, and I was quite frustrated. And he was just talking, Ireland aren't playing well, but they're doing what's required to win the game. And sometimes we probably don't, in the modern era where we're trying to be so process focused and try and get all the little moments right and hope that leads to a win, sometimes we don't talk enough about that or focus enough on that, and we don't want to win ugly sometimes. And it's just been interesting, just when you said that there, when you talked about these guys know what to do to win, it's something I've noticed he speaks about all the time is you know, you got to win the match first, and then you can analyze what you did right or what you did wrong and improve on it then. But I'd much rather be analyzing a win than analyzing a loss.
Very true. Very true. And when you were talking a minute ago about that academy system that Munster had back in the day, like or that what was the academy system, which was the AL clubs and the success. When you're back now, you're coaching with young Munsters. You're coaching 3 teams, if I'm correct. Are you coaching Munster?
No, well, I help out.
Sorry,
I coach an under 11s teams in Bowls, and I help out with an under 18s team in Bowls only a handful of times now. And
Pauly, that's not helping out. Helping out is me on a Saturday morning with my 5-year-old playing Stuck in the Mud.
that's what I'm doing, and I help out with young Munsters as well, because a good friend of mine is the head coach of young Munsters. Obviously, I played with young Munsters, and they're my club, but it's very enjoyable, I have to say.
Yeah, so I've been down to a few of those sessions, and it is brilliant to see 18-year-olds learning these things that were clearly taught to you by Joe Schmidt and by some of the best coaches, and very detailed stuff. How important do you think it is for ex-players to get back, and is that where it starts for you think for Munster maybe getting to a place where Leinster are and they're churning out all these players? Is it about these ex-professionals getting back and working with underage and trying to develop that level?
I'd say it's a bit of everything, but coaching definitely makes a massive difference in rugby. I think kids can go out and play a game of soccer against each other and get better. You can kick a soccer ball off the wall. Hurling, probably the best thing to make you better at hurling is consistently pucking a ball off the wall, and playing games and small-sided games. But rugby is just so complex that I think coaching can play such a massive role, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated. I so much of the coaching now, like we get an email there every week from Munster with a kind of a suggested session plan and a YouTube link showing you how to run the drills, and it's incredible. It's very hard to coach young kids rugby because it's such a complex game. You need to be so patient, and you just need to figure out what's important. And for me, what's important at that level is just catching and passing. I think the tackle is hard and you have to learn, but if you can get kids that are able to catch and pass and make good decisions on the catch pass, everything else, in the professional game, scrummaging or defense or lineouts or the strategic kicking game or attack from 5 meters out, all these really complicated things in rugby can be coached when they're older. But I think comfort on the ball, to be able to catch and pass and make decisions, you need to be doing that a long time. You can't learn that as a professional player. So I think when I looked at some of the New Zealand rugby, that was the first rugby to start during the lockdown, I thought a lot of the set piece stuff was inferior to what we do in the Northern Hemisphere. I think a lot of the defensive stuff was inferior to what we do in the Northern Hemisphere. I think a lot of the did I say the defense? I did. Sorry, a lot of the strategic kicking was inferior, but I think their power and their speed is ahead of us because they have these athletes. But their catch pass is just phenomenal, and their decision making, and ours is a long way behind that. And I think if you can put a massive emphasis on that from a very young age and coach all these kids who are parents who are, just stepping in to coach kids, if we can get them teaching the catch pass and these kind of catch pass games and catch pass under pressure and that mentality, I think that's where the biggest gains can be made. But it's not easy because, everyone wants to coach the line out or the ruck, and they're just so complicated. You have to spend a lot of time with them. But the real separator, I think, is the catch pass. And, we didn't do a whole lot of catch pass in my rugby life until I went professional. That was the first time I was ever really coached it or taught it. Whereas now it seems to be going down through the game, but I think we could probably be better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's where I think I developed most is out on the road playing with the ball. Fortunately, we had 5 or 6 lads on our road that played rugby, and it was those little skills that I think helped me most.
But if you talk to Tony Buckley, and I think John O'Sullivan as well from Kerry, they went to New Zealand on scholarships in transition year. But I think it was Tony Buckley was telling me they play touch rugby at small break, they play full contact rugby at big break, and they play rugby after school as well. So an 18-year-old or 19-year-old that's playing in the Irish under-20s against an Irish kid in the under-20s has accumulated hundreds, if not thousands, of more hours of rugby and catch pass and decision making than an Irish kid, and that's our big challenge. That's our big challenge. I think is to increase the number of hours they play the game, and not increase the number of hours they spend learning how to ruck or maul or scrummage, because I think you can coach a lot of that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's laws and coaching. I suppose you did play the game as well, and you were very good at playing the game, and you were very good at you're very successful, and you were very good at celebrating the successes. I think you were excellent at them as well.
Right.
Don't
watch me, mother.
not in front of the camera, but behind the camera, I think fair to say. But is there any moments when you look back, or is there a few moments that spring to mind immediately when I say, whether it was like a trophy winning moment or changing room? Is there a moment that flashed into your head going, fuck, that was great crack, Jesus?
I remember that one of those sale games, I'd say, what I'm going to talk. It's just tradition in rugby that no one ever gets the suits right for the formal post matches. So you generally, you could have all summer long to get the suits organised, but you get the suits 2 days before the one match you're supposed to wear them for all year. So I remember we were playing Sale and we were supposed to wear suits after the game. I don't know, was there some formal sponsor function? So I collected my suit, didn't try it on or anything, but it turned out to be, I would say, if Peter Stringer was an inch taller, it would have fitted him. I don't know, do you remember this? And so I put on the suit after the match. It didn't fit me. There was no shirt in the bag either, so I wore the suit with no shirt and a gold chain and runners to the Clarion. And we had a big night out in the Clarion there. I think Dennis Fogarty he might have started that match or else came off the bench in that match as well, and it had gone well for him. So he's just, if you can put him into any of those nights, he's generally brilliant value. So I remember that night being unbelievable crack. And those nights in the Clarion were great fun, because the Clarion Hotel is where we used to leave from for the big Munster matches in Thomond Park, and we used to go back to the Clarion after the games, and we had our own kind of room, and our family and friends and other staff and other teammates would come, and those nights were incredible fun. And there'd be a lot of supporters back there as well in the Clarion who you would have known, and so those nights were great fun to me. Another one, I don't know if you played in 2009 against Perpignan. Did you play in that game? When we went over there and we got a bonus point win.
I didn't. No, I remember the game though.
Yeah, but Munster started the thing at the time. Just to keep players connected with the old school, they'd started bringing mentors to the game. So Killian Keane had come to a game, an away game, and taken the role very seriously and chatted to all the young players. And John Kelly had come, Keith Wood had come. But in this weekend, Mick Galway came to the game, and just thoroughly just enjoyed himself. Had a few drinks here and there. There was obviously a few Alacadoos at the game as well. He went out with them. But I just remember for the few days, actually before we went, David Walsh, who had written Lawrence Delalio's autobiography, rang me and he said, "Look, I know you're playing Perpignan this weekend. The year Wasps won the European Cup, Delalios, they played Perpignan, but I think they had to get a bonus point win, or they did get a bonus point win, but they went out to Perpignan a day early. So I think they went on the Wednesday instead of the Thursday, and spent time in the village, in the town of Perpignan, and really wanted to let the people know they were there and they were there to do a job. That's why they went out early, and they ended up beating Perpignan in Perpignan when Perpignan were really strong, and got a bonus point win and went on to win the European Cup. So at that stage, when he told me it was Tuesday, so there was nothing we weren't going to change our flights and gone out a day earlier, but I said it to Pat Geraghty, and we ended up bringing a massive box with Munster flags and Munster keyrings and Munster hats and Munster scarves. And I remember on the Friday we went into the village, had a coffees, and we just give out loads of flags and scarves and keyrings and hats and all that. And when we were arriving at the game, loads of the Perpignan fans were waving them, along with their own Perpignan stuff as well. But Mick Galway had come to the game, and I just remember everyone at all the meals sitting around his table and just uproarious laughter as he was telling all the stories, and having a few drinks, and just I suppose Munster were best when we were like that. I suppose when it was quite serious, when we were a little bit like a Wimbledon team as well, we could be very not serious as well. And I think Declan Kidney used to, I suppose, encourage that, even though it was Tony McGann was coach at the time. But I remember having a great feeling going into the game, that we'd had a great few days. It had been great fun. Jean de Villiers had been dropped. It was the first time in his life he had ever been dropped, and he was devastated, and he was so determined. And he came off the bench and scored an unbelievable try. And I remember Raj put a great little grubber through for Dougie to get the bonus point. And Dennis Leamy was the best player. It was like under 12s rugby, where there's one player on the pitch who's way better than everyone else. I remember Dennis Leamy was like that day, and he got injured in the 80th minute of the game. I remember waking up the next morning on Sunday afterwards, waking up thinking, Leamy is playing so well, we could actually win the European Cup this year. I think it might have been 2010 actually, and I heard he had the knee injury then, which was an osteochondral defect, which was a pretty tough injury, which would have bugged him for the rest of his career, and he was out for a long time after it. But Mick Galway, I remember, came down at half time and gave a speech to the players. He wasn't supposed to be there, but his teeth were covered in wine and everything at the time, and he spoke really well. And I remember sitting down. We had a lot of South Africans with us at the time. I remember Vian Dupree saying after the game, he said, "Who is this guy that has been with us for the last?" And he speaks at half time. But that was just a great week, and we played great rugby. We got our bonus point win over there, which was a very rare thing at the time, and there's just a bit of madness in it as well. And that's a day that always stands out in my mind as well.
I remember the home match against Perpignan that year, and they had a little pocket of supporters up in the West Stand, I think, and they had flares going. And did they go ahead at one point? We weren't playing particularly well, yeah. And I remember I was injured, and I was in the opposite side of the stand, sitting next to my dad, who was going absolutely mental beside me, screaming abuse at ye. And then when the Perpignan, I think Raj was taking a kick, and the Perpignan supporters had a flare out and they were cheering, and he was roaring at them. But your dad was in front, and if I thought my dad was bad, your dad, he had a hat on, and he took off his hat and stood up and started hitting the seat in front of him, and started shushing them across the stadium like shh.
Yeah. But it's funny, I don't know, do you remember in the press conference afterwards, one of their players said it was like playing an academy team. We were in Thomond Park, they thought they were going over for a big game. We were useless, but he said we were like an academy team, and we beat them the next week and beat them well and played well. And I remember Quinny was getting stuck into your man the whole way through the game about the academy comment. But when we played Perpignan with Stade Francais last year, or 2 years ago when I was there, I was at dinner, and I sat down with the Perpignan players, but there was two old guys from Perpignan that were coming towards the end of their career. But your man was saying, this is the guy that was calling your team Munster an academy team back in the day. So we ended up having a few beers.
Brilliant. All right. Well, look, we'll wrap it up, I think. I saw the other day you've decided to join the Movember campaign. Fair play to you. I can't really see any resemblance of something there, right?
I'm like someone in second year in school.
Yeah.
Trying to grow a mustache. No, well, I started late. I just read the paper last week. I read Rory O'Connor from Rory Stories had a brilliant interview in the paper. He has a book out, but he just said he went to a funeral of a guy that committed suicide, and the guy's brother spoke at the funeral, and he said, "Look, if there's anyone here struggling, you have to reach out. You have to talk to people." And he said it's one of the things that probably saved him. So, I know people that have taken their lives. I know people that struggle with their mental health, but it's just making people aware. You got to talk to people. You got to reach out. I don't know. When that guy was speaking at the funeral, did he know he was going to save someone's life? I don't know if he did, but it seems to have worked. So, if we can use our profile to promote awareness, I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, do you obviously work with sports psychologists and stuff like that? But do you do anything now, like for mental health? Do you practice mindfulness? Do you do meditation? Do you do journaling? Anything along those lines?
A little bit. I do a little bit of mindfulness now and again when I feel like doing it, or when I have a bit of time. We started doing it. Jason Cowman was big into it, our S&C coach with Ireland, so I have a few habits from there. And I would have worked with Caroline Corrid in my early days. But I think for us rugby players, we're so used to having a sports psychologist around the place all the time. So talking to someone and asking for help isn't taboo for us. It's just normal, and it's just what you do. And it'd be great if it was normal and what you do for the majority of society as well.
Yeah, but I think I always looked at fellas like you, and I was like, you never showed a sign of weakness or anything like that. It was always you're a leader from a young age. You're always kind of on a pedestal that you I don't know, people would go to you with problems and issues. Did you feel that pressure massively as a player, or was it just what motivated you?
No, I felt pressure as captain. I think I probably looked at captain the wrong way in some ways, in that great teams are great teams because they had a great captain. It's very rarely the case. So I probably put pressure on myself in that regard. I wouldn't have been very good with sports psychology in my early days, and it was only I met Caroline Corrid I'd say she was just out of college, and she was, I don't know, was she doing some thesis? She was speaking to some people around how they prepare, and she ended up she was pretty, horrified by some of the things I used to do around preparation. So some of that resonated with me, and she did some very basic stuff for me, and that got me on the journey of probably reading books about it and being open to it. And again, probably the best sports psychologist I had, or one of the best sports psychologists I had, was Joe Schmidt. He would have done a lot of very good stuff without thinking it. And then you're meeting guys like Enda McNulty's with the Irish team all the time. You're chatting him in an airport, or meeting him, bumping into him for a coffee in the airport. And rather than sitting down on the couch, Sigmund Freud style, you're just shooting the breeze with them, and you find you're just picking up little bits and pieces all the time, or they send you a newspaper article or something like that. So I enjoyed that part of the game, because I was always trying to solve, trying to be a little bit more relaxed going into the game so that I could be a better leader, and I suppose put less pressure on myself, and maybe put less pressure on some of the other people around me as well.
Brilliant. All right, well, I think it's time we go watch the Masters, lads, for the day. Go watch the golf. I can't wait. Actually, you played golf with Bill Murray, and I want to ask you about that quickly. I think I've never actually properly got a chance to ask you, of all the people to play golf with, oh my God, if I could spend 4 hours walking around the golf course with that fella, what was that like?
Yeah, it was great. I was very nervous, I think, probably too nervous, but he was good fun. He was, I think Michael Phelps was on their team, and he brought all these Omega watches for all the American team, and he was standing beside me, and he was showing me the watch that Michael Phelps used to do. He said, "See this watch?" He said, Michael Phelps arrived with these watches this morning. He said, I could just go and buy an Amiga watch if I wanted. He just need to give me a free Amiga watch. I don't know what he was doing. But then we'd be out on the course and he'd be kind of hitting a shot out of the rough, and he'd just turn around to the crowd and say, what you say? And then he'd tell them the time. He'd say, it's 12:15. And then he'd go, Michael Phelps bought me that. And, so he was just... He was just going around telling people the time the whole way, and he was good fun. He was just great fun, crazy, lovely golfer. Plays after about 9.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
we halved our match. He was with Huey Lewis from Huey Lewis and the News.
What? That's even crazier.
Yeah,
He was one of the biggest superstars of the 80s. Literally, I think he was the number one artist for the 80s in terms of sales and number one hits or something like that. There's some crazy figure out there. What was he like?
Yeah, he was lovely as well. Yeah, he was quieter. He wasn't as mad, but he was a really cool guy. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. All right, that's an unmerciful potholing. I'd say that's our biggest potholing yet. Is it, Trimby? You happy?
It's certainly our longest, most high profile potholing. So congratulations.
Has anyone tried the Jordan Murphy reverse pothole yet?
Not on us. No, we're potholing people good. I mean,
Jordan Murphy was a fan of the reverse pothole. He'd get into a taxi and he'd pepper the taxi driver with questions. Your man wouldn't get a word in edgeways. Turnover and the car and working hours and turnover for that evening and targets for the evening. And
do you still get it on merciful potholing now?
No.
You're getting off. I'd say, I knew he'd say that. You can never. I remember your wedding in France was one of the best, most crack I've had at a wedding. Unbelievable. Very quiet village, nicely situated, away from any seaside resorts where you might get some Irish fans that would wander in on the wedding. But if I remember correctly, there was still one Irish fan.
Yeah, no. I got married in the cathedral in Osh, and I mean, it's kind of a tourist attraction to the town, but I didn't know that they don't close the church. They never closed the church or the cathedral, so there was loads of people there when all my guests were there, and I was up the top, and I said to your man, I went up to the priest and I said, listen, when are you clearing out the church? He's there. We don't. He said, people are entitled to be here. So, I mean, there was a guy down at the back with his top off.
Headphones.
But there was a guy, I remember, so there was people taking a lot of, I suppose, Asian tourists there taking photos and stuff, and it was just ridiculous. But there was a guy in Connacht shorts and a Connacht polo shirt over when I was kneeling down in front of the priest. Whenever he caught my eye, he'd give me the thumbs up like this. And when we did the peace be with you, Trimby, you wouldn't know about this, but when we did the peace be with you part, he came straight in with the hands for the peace be with you. And he Connacht Bermudas and a Connacht polo shirt on.
Yeah, I remember that very well. All right, brilliant, man. Thanks a million for taking the time.
Pleasure.
Enjoy the golf over the weekend, and we'll hopefully talk to you when lockdown 2.0 is over and we'll have a beer.
Okay, cheers guys. Great talking to you.
Cheers, man.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Recently, we launched our Patreon page for our nearest and dearest penguins, and you've been just lovely so far. Please support your Uncle Barney, your Auntie Andy, and Her Holiness Sister Dermy of Assisi for the price of an onion bhaji,
A Cliff Richard calendar,
5 turnips,
a fidget spinner,
a packet of Weetabix,
a microwave dinner,
conceding a last-minute consolation try to Zebra,
a Simply Red album bought in Tesco's,
a Hunger Buster packet of multi-pack potatoes.
You can help us avoid having to send our kids to work at the age of 5. Thank you.